The person who laughed at my biggest dream was the same person who would later call me when everything she built started falling apart. I still remember the evening I told my wife about my plan to create my own business. I had spent months researching the market, studying opportunities, and building a strategy that I truly believed in. It was not a random idea or a simple wish. It was something I had carefully prepared for. But when I shared it with Emily, her reaction was not what I expected. Emily Carter was intelligent, successful, and respected in her career. She had worked hard to become a leading executive at her company, and I always admired her determination. I was proud of everything she had achieved. But over time, I noticed that she began seeing success in only one way. To her, success meant a recognized position, a stable income, and achievements that other people could easily see. My dream looked different. I wanted to build something of my own. I wanted to create a business based on my ideas, my experience, and the lessons I had learned throughout my career. I knew it would take time. I knew there would be challenges. But I also knew that every successful company started with someone believing in an idea before anyone else did. When I explained my vision, Emily listened for a moment. Then she smiled and told me she thought I was being unrealistic. She said building a business was not as simple as having a good idea. She reminded me how many people failed when they tried to create something new. Her words were not meant to be cruel, but they still hurt because they came from the person whose support mattered most to me. She asked why I would risk creating uncertainty when I could simply choose a safer path. I understood her concern, but I also realized she did not truly understand what I was trying to build. I was not chasing success because I wanted attention. I was chasing it because I believed I had something valuable to offer. I had spent years learning about business, customers, and leadership. I knew that success was not guaranteed, but I also knew that doing nothing would guarantee that my idea would never become reality. I did not argue with Emily that night. I did not try to convince her that she was wrong. Instead, I quietly continued working on my plan. My name is Nathan Carter, and for most of my life, I have learned that actions often speak louder than explanations. I believe that if my idea had real value, the results would eventually tell the story for me. While Emily continued focusing on her successful career, I spent my evenings building the foundation for my company. I researched competitors, contacted potential partners, and improved my strategy step by step. I knew the journey would not be easy, but I also knew that every meaningful achievement required patience. What Emily did not know was that my dream was not just a dream anymore. It was becoming a real opportunity. And while she believed I was chasing something impossible, circumstances were quietly changing around her. Because the same business world she trusted so much was about to face a challenge that would make her look for help in a place she never expected. After that evening, I realized something important. Sometimes the hardest part of building a dream is not the work itself. It is continuing when the people closest to you do not believe in it. I never expected Emily to understand everything immediately, but I hoped she would see the effort behind my decision. Instead, I learned that sometimes people judge the results before they understand the journey. While Emily continued leading her company, I focused on building the foundation of my own business. I started every morning with a clear plan and ended every night reviewing what I had accomplished. My office was not a large space with impressive decorations. It was a small room in our home with a desk, a computer, and stacks of notes filled with ideas. To someone walking by, it probably looked ordinary. But to me, it represented possibility. I knew that every successful entrepreneur started somewhere, and I was willing to begin with what I had. My approach was different from what many people expected. I was not trying to become successful overnight. I was not looking for quick attention or trying to prove anyone wrong. I wanted to build a company that solved a real problem and created something valuable. That required patience, learning, and the ability to keep moving forward even when progress was slow. During this time, I spent hours studying customer needs, improving my business plan, and speaking with people who had experience in different industries. Some conversations opened new opportunities. Others showed me areas where I needed to improve. I welcomed both because every lesson helped me become better prepared. Emily saw me working, but I do not think she understood what I was doing. To her, it probably looked like I was spending time on an uncertain idea. She did not see the research, the planning, and the careful decisions happening behind the scenes. She only saw the visible results, and at that stage, there were not many results to show. One evening, Emily came home after another successful day at her company. She talked about a new project, a major meeting, and the progress her team was making. I was genuinely happy for her because I knew how much effort she had invested in her career. But when the conversation turned to my business, her expression changed. She asked if I was still working on the same idea. I told her yes. She looked concerned and reminded me that sometimes people needed to accept when something was not working. Those words stayed with me, but they did not stop me. I understood that Emily was speaking from her own experience. She had built a successful career by making practical decisions and avoiding unnecessary risks. But what she did not understand was that my dream was not based on emotion alone. It was based on preparation. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. A small company that had been struggling to find the right direction reached out to me. They had heard about my approach and wanted my advice. It was not a major opportunity yet, but it was proof that my work was beginning to attract attention. I kept the conversation private because I wanted to focus on building something real before announcing anything. Meanwhile, Emily's company continued expanding, and everyone around her believed she was on the path to even greater success. She had no reason to think differently. She believed her future was secure. She believed my business was still just an uncertain dream. But what neither of us knew was that the next challenge facing her company would completely change the way she saw my ambitions. The opportunity that came to me was small, but I knew better than to underestimate small beginnings. Many successful companies started with one person believing in an idea before anyone else recognized its potential. I had spent years learning that growth was not always measured by how quickly something became popular. Sometimes growth happened quietly, through consistent effort and the right decisions made at the right time. While I continued developing my business, Emily's company was entering a completely different phase. From the outside, everything looked successful. The company had a respected name, a talented team, and a strong presence in the industry. Emily had worked hard to create that reputation, and I never questioned her ability. She was disciplined, intelligent, and determined. But even successful companies could face challenges that were not visible to everyone. Behind the positive reports and confident presentations, there were signs that things were becoming more complicated. A major client had started asking difficult questions. A new competitor had entered the market with a different approach. Some internal decisions that worked well in the past were becoming less effective as the company continued growing. Emily and her leadership team spent long hours trying to find solutions. She believed that the answer would come from stronger strategies, more meetings, and better execution. Those things were important, but the company also needed a fresh perspective from someone who could see the situation differently. I heard about these challenges through conversations with people in the business community. At first, I did not think much about it. Many companies faced difficult moments, and I had always believed that people should solve their own problems before asking others for help. But as I learned more, I realized the situation was becoming more serious. The same company where Emily had built her reputation was now facing the kind of uncertainty that every business leader feared. Meanwhile, my own company was beginning to gain momentum. The people I had worked with started sharing positive feedback about my ideas and approach. A few early partnerships developed, and I began building a small but reliable network of people who believed in the direction I was taking. It was not a massive success story yet, but it was real progress. I never wanted to use my progress to make Emily feel wrong. That was never my goal. I still respected her and the work she had done. The difference was that I finally understood something important. Someone else's doubt did not determine whether my dream had value. As the weeks passed, Emily became more focused on solving problems at her company. She started coming home later and spending more time reviewing reports. I noticed the change, but I did not bring it up because I knew she was carrying a lot of responsibility. One evening, she received an unexpected update from her leadership team. A planned business expansion was facing serious obstacles, and some important partners wanted reassurance about the company's future. Emily remained calm, but I could see the pressure in her expression. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in the person who always seemed to have everything under control. She did not know it yet, but the experience that would challenge her company was also going to challenge the way she viewed me. The person she once believed was chasing an unrealistic dream was becoming someone she might need to understand in a completely different way. The pressure inside Emily's company continued to grow, even though she tried her best to keep everything under control. From the outside, she still appeared confident and professional. She walked into meetings with the same determination, answered questions with the same calm attitude, and showed everyone around her that she believed in the future of the company. But I knew her well enough to notice the small changes. She spent more evenings reviewing documents. She checked her phone more often. She became quieter during our conversations at home. Emily had always been someone who carried responsibility without complaining, but this time the challenge was different. It was not just about solving a normal business problem. It was about protecting something she had spent years building. I never wanted to see her struggle. Even after she doubted my dream, I still respected the work she had done and the dedication she had shown throughout her career. I knew how much effort it took to build something meaningful. That was something we actually had in common. The difference was that we had chosen different paths. Emily built her success in a company where her achievements were visible to everyone. I was building mine quietly, one decision at a time. One afternoon, I received a message from someone I had worked with in the past. His name was Michael Reynolds, and he had spent decades helping companies improve their strategies. He had heard about my business project and wanted to discuss an opportunity. During our conversation, he mentioned Emily's company. He explained that several leaders were searching for a new perspective because the company needed to adapt to changing conditions. They had strong employees and valuable resources, but they needed someone who could look at the situation from a different angle. I listened carefully because I understood the importance of the decision. This was not just another business conversation. This was connected to someone I cared about. Michael did not know the full story between Emily and me. He only knew that I had experience and that my approach could help. He asked if I would be willing to meet with the leadership team. For a moment, I hesitated. I knew there was a possibility that Emily would see me in a completely different way. I knew she might finally discover that the dream she once questioned was becoming something real. But I also knew that refusing to help because of pride would go against everything I believed in. Success was not about proving someone wrong. It was about creating something valuable when the opportunity appeared. I agreed to the meeting. A few days later, I walked into Emily's company headquarters for the first time as someone they were considering for guidance. The building looked exactly like I imagined. It was modern, organized, and filled with people working toward a common goal. As I entered the conference room, I saw Emily sitting with her leadership team. For a brief moment, we looked at each other. She seemed surprised to see me there. She knew I had been working on my business, but she did not expect me to be involved in a conversation about her company's future. Michael introduced me and explained why he believed my perspective could be valuable. Everyone at the table listened as I shared my thoughts about the challenges they were facing. I talked about improving processes, understanding customers better, and creating a stronger connection between leadership and employees. I did not speak like someone trying to impress them. I spoke like someone who genuinely wanted to understand the situation. As the meeting continued, I noticed something changing in Emily's expression. She was no longer looking at me as the person with an unrealistic dream. She was looking at me as someone with knowledge she had never taken the time to discover. And for the first time, she began to wonder if she had been wrong about me all along. The meeting with Emily's leadership team continued longer than I expected, but I understood why. The company was facing important decisions, and every person in that room wanted to make sure they were choosing the right direction. I listened carefully to their concerns, reviewed the information they provided, and asked questions about areas that needed improvement. I was not interested in making quick judgments. I had learned throughout my career that every company had a story behind its numbers. The reports could show results, but they did not always explain the reasons behind those results. As I continued learning about the company, I noticed something important. The foundation was not the problem. The people were talented, the ideas were valuable, and the company still had opportunities ahead. The challenge was that growth had created new problems, and the old methods were no longer enough. They needed a different perspective, not because the leadership team had failed, but because every successful organization eventually reached moments where change became necessary. Michael Reynolds asked me to share my thoughts with the team. I explained that the company needed to focus on its strengths while improving the areas that were creating difficulties. I talked about understanding customers better, strengthening communication between departments, and creating a clearer strategy for future growth. Everyone listened carefully, including Emily. What surprised me most was not that she accepted my ideas. It was that she was finally willing to hear them. For years, she had known me as her husband, but she had never truly seen the way I approached business. She had only seen the quiet person working from home, not the person studying markets, building relationships, and developing plans behind the scenes. After the meeting, several executives approached me with additional questions. They wanted to discuss possible strategies and understand how I reached certain conclusions. I appreciated their interest, but I reminded them that success would not come from one person. A company could not depend on a single idea or individual. It required teamwork, commitment, and people willing to adapt. As I prepared to leave, Emily asked if we could talk privately. We walked through the quiet hallway outside the conference room, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. I could tell she was processing everything she had seen and heard. Finally, she looked at me and admitted that she had never realized how much experience I had. She said she always thought my business dream was based on hope rather than preparation. I told her that I understood why she felt that way. From the outside, it probably looked like I was simply taking a risk without a clear plan. But I explained that every step had been intentional. I had spent years learning, preparing, and building relationships because I knew that meaningful success required more than confidence. It required discipline. Emily looked down for a moment and said something that I did not expect. She told me that she was sorry for making assumptions about me. She admitted that she had judged my progress based only on what she could see, without understanding the work happening behind the scenes. Hearing those words meant something, but I also knew this was only the beginning. An apology could open a door, but rebuilding trust required time and actions. The next day, Michael contacted me with an important update. After reviewing my recommendations, the leadership team wanted me to take a larger role in helping guide the company forward. They believed my experience could provide the direction they needed. I looked at the message and thought about everything that had happened. The dream Emily once questioned was no longer something people ignored. It had become the reason they were asking for my help. But more importantly, this moment was not about proving I was right. It was about showing that people should never be underestimated before their story is fully understood. The days after that meeting felt different, not because everything changed overnight, but because something important had shifted. For the first time, Emily saw the part of my life that I had kept quietly building for years. She saw the planning, the patience, and the discipline behind my decisions. She realized that what she once viewed as an uncertain dream was actually the result of careful preparation and determination. I did not expect her perspective to change immediately, but I appreciated that she was willing to look deeper. The company leadership team continued discussing the challenges they were facing, and I began working with them more closely. My role was not to take control or tell everyone what to do. My purpose was to help them identify opportunities they had overlooked and create a stronger path forward. I spent time speaking with different departments, listening to employees, and understanding the daily challenges that affected the company. I believe that good solutions came from understanding people, not just analyzing numbers. Emily watched how I approached the situation. She noticed that I never tried to make anyone feel embarrassed or remind them that they had underestimated me. I was focused on helping the company succeed because I believed that was the right thing to do. That surprised her because she expected someone in my position to want recognition. Instead, she saw that my goal was not to prove a point. It was to create something meaningful. One evening, after a long day of discussions, Emily and I sat together at home. The conversation was different from the ones we had before. There was less tension and more honesty. She told me that she had been thinking about the night she questioned my dream. She admitted that she had been so focused on her own definition of success that she failed to recognize another person's path. She said she believed success had to look a certain way, and because my journey looked different, she assumed it was less valuable. I listened carefully because I knew those words came from a place of reflection. I told her that I never needed her to have all the answers. I only wanted her to believe that I was capable of finding them. I explained that support did not mean agreeing with every decision. It meant respecting the effort and understanding the person behind the decision. Emily nodded and told me she finally understood. She realized that the person she thought needed to find direction was actually someone who had been creating his own direction all along. Over the next few weeks, the company began making steady improvements. The leadership team started implementing new strategies, and employees became more confident about the future. The progress was not because of one person alone. It came from many people working together with a clearer understanding of their goals. I continued building my own business while supporting Emily's company when needed. For the first time, we were no longer comparing our achievements. We were learning from each other. The experience changed both of us. Emily learned that success could exist in many forms, and I learned that sometimes people need time to understand what they cannot immediately see. Looking back, I realized the most valuable moment was not when others finally recognized my abilities. It was when the people closest to me began seeing the person behind the dream. Because a dream is not defined by how quickly others believe in it. It is defined by the commitment of the person who continues building it even when nobody else can see the final result yet. As the company began moving forward, I noticed something unexpected happening. The biggest change was not only happening inside the business. It was happening between Emily and me. For years, we had been living beside each other while following completely different paths. Emily was focused on building her career and protecting the success she had created. I was focused on building something new and proving to myself that my ideas had value. We both worked hard, but we had forgotten how important it was to understand each other's perspective. Now, we were finally learning how to support one another instead of measuring whose path was better. At the company, I continued working with the leadership team to improve their approach. I encouraged them to look beyond short-term results and focus on creating a stronger foundation. I shared ideas about improving customer relationships, developing better internal communication, and creating a culture where employees felt valued. These were not complicated concepts, but sometimes the simplest ideas were the ones people overlooked when they became too focused on immediate challenges. Emily paid close attention to the process. She began asking questions about how I made certain decisions and why I looked at problems differently. I enjoyed those conversations because they reminded me that learning should never stop. Even after years of experience, there was always something new to understand. One afternoon, Emily joined me during a discussion with several members of her team. In the past, she might have expected me to simply provide answers. Instead, she saw me asking others for their opinions and encouraging different viewpoints. I explained that a strong business was not built by one person having every answer. It was built by creating an environment where people could contribute their knowledge and ideas. After the meeting, Emily told me she admired the way I approached leadership. She said she had always associated confidence with having the loudest voice in the room, but she was beginning to understand that real confidence often came from listening and making thoughtful decisions. Her words meant a lot to me because they showed genuine growth. She was no longer just accepting my abilities because she needed my help. She was respecting the way I viewed the world. At the same time, I continued developing my own company. The experience with Emily's business gave me new insights into leadership and growth. It reminded me that every company, no matter how successful, eventually faces moments where it must adapt. The lessons I learned from helping her team also helped me become a better entrepreneur. Our relationship started changing in small ways. We talked more openly about our goals, our concerns, and our hopes for the future. We stopped assuming we already knew what the other person was thinking. Instead, we started having conversations that we should have had years earlier. One evening, Emily looked at the plans for my business and smiled. She told me that she finally understood why I believed in my dreams so strongly. She said the most impressive thing was not the business itself, but the commitment behind it. I told her that her support meant more now because it came from understanding rather than expectation. Looking back, I realized that the biggest transformation was not about a company, an investment, or a business opportunity. It was about two people learning to see each other clearly. Sometimes the greatest success is not when the world finally recognizes your value. Sometimes it is when the people closest to you finally understand it. The changes that happened after that period were not dramatic or sudden. They happened through small moments that slowly transformed the way Emily and I saw each other. We had spent years building separate identities. She was known as a successful executive who could handle difficult situations with confidence. I was known only as the person quietly working on a business idea that many people did not understand. But now, those two worlds were finally connected. Emily began taking a deeper interest in my company. She asked about my goals, my challenges, and the decisions I was making for the future. What surprised me was that her questions were no longer coming from doubt. They came from genuine curiosity. She wanted to understand the process instead of judging the outcome. I appreciated that change because I knew how difficult it could be to admit when your first impression of someone was wrong. At her company, the improvements continued. The leadership team started using a more thoughtful approach to decision-making. They focused on long-term growth instead of only reacting to immediate problems. Employees became more involved in conversations about the future, and the company culture began improving. Emily often told me that the biggest lesson she learned was that success was not only about having the right strategy. It was also about having the ability to listen, adapt, and recognize valuable ideas no matter where they came from. Meanwhile, my own business continued growing. I reached new milestones that I had once only imagined. I built stronger partnerships, expanded my network, and continued developing my vision. But the experience with Emily's company changed the way I thought about entrepreneurship. Before, I believed success was mainly about proving that my idea could work. Now, I understood that success was also about creating value for others. One weekend, Emily and I visited a small coffee shop where we used to spend time when we were younger. We talked about everything that had happened over the past year. She laughed when she remembered how certain she was that my business dream would never become anything significant. I smiled because I remembered that moment clearly too. But instead of feeling hurt, I felt grateful because that experience had taught me something important. Emily told me that she wished she had supported me sooner. She said she had been so focused on protecting her own success that she forgot to encourage the person beside her. I told her that everyone makes mistakes, and what matters is whether people are willing to learn from them. Our conversation was simple, but it represented a major change in our relationship. We were no longer two people trying to prove who was right. We were partners who understood that different perspectives could make both of us stronger. Over time, people around us began noticing the difference. Friends who knew our story saw that we communicated better and supported each other more. They saw two people who had gone through a difficult misunderstanding but came out with greater respect and appreciation. The most meaningful part of the journey was not that Emily finally recognized my abilities. It was that we both learned a deeper lesson about relationships and success. A person's value is not always visible at the beginning of their journey. Sometimes the greatest achievements are built quietly, away from attention, while others are still deciding whether to believe in them. And sometimes, the person who understands your dream last becomes the person who believes in it the most. A year after everything changed, I often found myself thinking about how different life looked from where we started. The most surprising part was not the growth of my company or the improvements inside Emily's organization. The most meaningful change was the way we understood each other. We had learned that success was not a competition between two people. It was not about one person being right and the other being wrong. It was about two people recognizing each other's strengths and supporting each other through every stage of life. My company continued to grow steadily. I expanded my team, developed new partnerships, and built a reputation based on trust and consistency. The progress did not happen because of one lucky moment. It happened because of years of preparation, patience, and the willingness to keep learning. Every challenge I faced taught me something valuable, and every setback helped me improve my approach. Emily's company also entered a new chapter. The changes we had worked on created a stronger foundation for the future. The leadership team became more open to new ideas. Employees felt more connected to the company's mission, and decisions were made with a clearer understanding of long-term goals. Emily became a different kind of leader. She still had the same ambition and determination, but she also developed a deeper appreciation for listening and understanding. She often told me that one of the biggest lessons she learned was that people should never be judged only by what they have already achieved. Everyone has a story that others may not see. Someone who appears to be struggling may actually be building something important. Someone who seems quiet may have spent years preparing for an opportunity that has not arrived yet. Looking back, I realized that the moment Emily questioned my dream was not the moment that defined our relationship. The moment that defined us was what happened afterward. It was the willingness to learn, to communicate, and to see each other differently. We could have allowed that misunderstanding to create distance between us, but instead, we used it as a chance to grow. One evening, Emily and I sat together at home, looking through old photos from the early years of our marriage. We laughed about the challenges we had faced and the lessons we had learned. She reminded me of the night she first heard about my business idea and admitted that she never imagined where that journey would lead. I told her that I never expected everything to happen the way it did either. Life rarely follows the exact plan we create. Sometimes the moments that feel discouraging at first become the moments that teach us the most. Today, when people ask me about success, I do not talk only about business growth or financial achievements. I talk about resilience, belief, and the importance of having people around you who are willing to understand your journey. A dream does not become valuable because everyone believes in it from the beginning. A dream becomes valuable because someone is willing to work for it, even when recognition has not arrived yet. The greatest reward was not seeing others change their opinion about me. The greatest reward was building a life where Emily and I no longer looked at each other through assumptions. We learned to see the effort, the purpose, and the person behind the goals. And that lesson is something no business achievement could ever replace.